Hey y'all, welcome into a Saints live chat. My name is Jeff Nowak, sports digital producer for WWL Radio and Audacy Sports. And I wanted to meet with y'all today and talk to Mike Haas, the new voice of the Saints. He is taking over for Zach Strief on the radio play-by-play for WWL Radio on game days. And just overall interesting person. He's been here since 1989. I believe I got that right. So 3 decades, long-time broadcaster, or long-time sports journalist, TV journalist. What's the name? What do you call yourselves in TV these days?
A hybrid. I don't know. You name it, I did it. So it doesn't really matter. Whatever you say will be applicable.
Perfect. And that was WWL TV. And, you went off to do your own ventures for the last couple years. And now you're back on game day. Mike, just kind of tell us a little about yourself. How exciting is it to be getting ready in this new role?
It is exciting. As we sit here today, we are a month away from Baltimore and the start of the preseason. And that excites me and frightens me all at the same time. It'll be 180 players, 90 on each roster. And the starters will play a couple of series, and then you'll be at the third string fullback for both teams. And so it's, that aspect of it is, you can't see it, but in front of me is just research. So I'm, overwhelmed with excitement with what the last few weeks have been. And the support's been fantastic. Zach's been fantastic. And so it's, it's been such a learning process for me about, learning. Before we did this, I was up in the booth. My office right now, still, I'm communications coordinator, media relations with the Superdome. So my office, this is the Superdome. So I went up in the press box into the WWL Radio booth 10 minutes ago. And so, and that was really the first time I've been up there. And it was just kind of like, whoa, it was pretty heady stuff. And that's just like the last few weeks have been. It's all been just, I'm feeling like I'm going to wake up and go, we're just teasing. It's 2018 all over again. Zach didn't go to coaching. You crazy? Why would you do that? And so, yeah, I'm just, humbled and ready, to get going with camp, but yet there's a ton of work to do.
How much time do you spend working on name pronunciations? I think that's an understated difficulty. I'm not, worrying about them a ton now. Zach said something to me the other day, and we were just kind of talking about the broadcast in general. And it was just it stuck with me because it's like, get the basics, we'll build. Get the foundation, and we'll build. So, I'm working on basically the starters right now, not knowing who they are, but basically looking at, 5 facts about, Ryan Remchek, 5 facts about Cesar Ruiz, doing the offensive line. And now it's actually like 10 facts, but I'll eventually weed it down to 5. So the name pronunciations to me won't be as important until we start getting towards the 14th and who's going to play and who's going to play for Baltimore. And certainly, that's when it becomes real. And that's not a strength of mine. I have to practice it a billion times until it kind of feels right. And so, it's not a concern, but it's something I will be working on. It's too early to get too involved in that. Right. Yeah. No matter how much practice, I think that first time that Tano
Passignon
gets a sack, you got
to go fast.
Yeah,
man. You got to go fast.
That reaction is going to be interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Just say it fast.
TP.
And
you can't even say TP. It's TK. Right? You only go, TP on the sack. Whoa, it's TK.
Right. He needs a nickname. He needs a solid nickname.
I'm assure you, by the second day of camp, we'll know his nickname.
Right. But okay, so a reminder, everyone, if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, thank you, and leave a comment. Make sure if you're on YouTube, make sure to follow us on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, make sure to follow us on YouTube over at WWL Sports. And we're going to go into a segment that I'm going to call Have You Met Mike? And we're going to hit him with a few quick questions to kind of dive in. First, who was the first Saints player you ever interviewed?
Ooh,
if you can remember. Do your best.
Probably would have been Bobby Aber. We're
Really?
very close to it. It would have been my first camp, would have been lacrosse. '89. And so, it probably would have been post-practice in lacrosse. I didn't go up right away. I went up after the Buffalo away game. So, the first Saint I ever interviewed was Channel 4 did the games. We physically did the games. We had our own director, our own camera operators. Jim and Archie were in the booth. I was on the field. And so we did a post-game show that I hosted the post-game show. And I interviewed Richard Harvey, who was a former Tulane linebacker, super good guy, just a super good guy. And so he came out to do post-game with me to be an interview. And they tossed him. Richard, it was post-game, and was kind of like still stiff. So he was running like 20, 30-yard sprints behind me. And I'm like, Richard, we're live. I need you over here. So he was probably my first actual interview, but it would have been probably somebody like Bobby at camp or, more, something like that.
Cool. Okay, moving on. And a warning, not all of these are Saints related. 2, what is your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh.
Making you work here.
I mean, I'm a little OCD. I would say promptness. My parents raised my sister and I, man, if you weren't 10 minutes early, you were late. And so, and it's not like I'm never late. I can be late, but it's a big deal for me that, you're on time. And so my kids and my wife, we try to be late and we're 10 minutes early. And so that's a pretty big one to me. I think it says a lot about kind of who you are, so to speak.
You and Tom Coughlin would get along.
Yeah, there we go.
It's one of my favorite Saints or NFL stories. Or Michael Strahan would always complain that Tom Coughlin set the clocks in the facility 5 minutes early, and if you showed up on time, you were late. And he was like, "Then start the meeting 5 minutes earlier.
Right.
Don't tell me to show up at 8 if the meeting's at 7:55." Anyway, moving on. I'm going to name 2 things. This is going to be a tough one. One of them you have to pick that you can never do again.
Okay.
Mardi Gras parade, crawfish boil. Eliminate one.
Gee, why don't you just ask me to pick my favorite child?
I told you it wasn't going to be easy.
I would have to say at my age, I'd have to say the parade. I could watch it on TV, and I've done a million of them. If you told me at my age I could never go to a parade again, I would hate it, but I would live with it. If you told me I could never have a crawfish boil again, where I am and in my life and career, I'd say, ooh. So it's a tough one. That's unfair, quite frankly.
I know.
But
I
would say
I told you these were not going to be.
I would say the parade. And I'll get letters. I'm sending them to you.
Well, see, we did go a whole year without parades, so we have learned that we can survive without them. So I guess there is that. I will tell you there was a loophole in that question, which is it doesn't say you can't boil crawfish. It just says you can't have a crawfish boil. But I appreciate you. I'm
a boiler. If I'm having crawfish, I'm cooking them. I will rarely go out and eat crawfish at a restaurant. If I'm eating crawfish, we're cooking them.
That's good to know. Okay, so everyone, make sure to go follow at Mike Hoss, COMM. That's short for communications on Twitter, and tell him that you are offended that he hates Mardi Gras. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But definitely go follow him. One last question. This will be a little easier. If you were an NFL player, what number would you pick and why?
31.
And obviously, there are positions.
Yeah, the position. So 31. I don't know where that would probably put me. Certainly,
be a running back.
Running. Yeah, that'd be me. Maybe a fullback.
On defense, it'd be a cornerback, I think.
Right. So 31. It was the number I wore in high school. I played high school basketball. So 31 was a number I wore from Mike O'Corin, who was a North Carolina basketball player. He was my favorite player growing up. I'm a very old guy. That is a very old sentence that I just said Mike O'Corin in. And then I also got married on March 31st. So 31 is a number that has been important to me my whole life for the most part, if you think about it.
That was a very high quality answer to a low quality question. I appreciate that.
I mean, you get to throw in Mike O'Corin and my wife in the same sentence. That's hard to work in.
All right. So one more viewer question before we get into the training camp stuff. And I don't even know exactly how you would answer this question, but we're going to go with it. What will be your signature TD call? How would you call a touchdown? Have you thought about that? I think that's an interesting question.
I think the signature calls, first off, you can't plan them. You can't write them out. You can't, they're going to sound kind of, pre-planned. If you think about the touchdown call themselves, Jim and Zach, and they were pretty Saints touchdown or touchdown. Say, it's really, there are other places that you'll work in what people will say would be your signature part of the broadcast. I don't know if it's on a touchdown. It's just, maybe, but it'll just have to kind of happen. I can't tell you what I'm going to say on the set. It'll be Saints touchdown, and maybe something else flows out. I don't have a great filter, and so I've thought about it, and I know that if you write down what you think is going to be cool, it's going to sound horrific, and so I think it needs to be kind of an organic, and just kind of happen, and then kind of see how it feels. So but Saints touchdown has worked pretty good for the past 30 plus years, or touchdown Saints, however you want to do it. Beyond that, we'll see.
This is true.
Good question.
And, so not everyone can be Mike Breen and just yell bang.
Right.
Like when you take that out of the context, think about going into a job and being like, any big play, I'm going to yell bang. And people are going to love it.
And you wrote that down, and then would you go, yeah, that sounds good. I'll do that. I'm like, that sounds crazy, And so it's the people who have these signature calls will tell you it didn't happen on purpose. It happened some crazy way, and it kind of stuck, and they kind of kept doing it. It's not, this is not Jim Nantz at the 18th hole of the Masters, where he's had 3 holes to prepare to say what he's going to say when Tiger Woods makes the putt. And Jim Nantz is brilliant. Don't get me wrong, I love Jim Nantz, but that's different. That's a one-time kind of thing. This is, let's just hope they score so many times that I'll have plenty of things to test out.
Right. And don't go with Do You Believe in Miracles, because that one's taken.
See, again.
All right.
Now that one I think was probably, Al would say he probably thought of that one ahead of time. And if this team wins, final clock winding down, do you believe in miracles? I don't know that to be true, but I don't know.
I'd guess that he planned that because it wasn't. It's different when you're calling a touchdown that you expected or you didn't expect versus that was the game ending, so you have a little time to mentally prepare.
Look at his partner. This is one of your different partners, Dick Enberg. Is probably known best for "Oh my." I bet he didn't. That just came one night. He went, "Oh my," you know what I mean? He didn't write down, "Oh my." Oh, that'll be good. Let's do that. It just one night some crazy point. He went, "Oh my," and so it's just you never know. I think it just has to just be organic.
For sure.
Yes, Marv Albert. Yes, I'm going to say yes. Like when Marv Albert wrote that. Yes, he didn't write that. It just happened.
This isn't a signature call or anything, but one of the things that comes to mind when you think of broadcasters and kind of just the things that they say, because everyone kind of falls into a routine. Chris Collinsworth, here's a guy,
right?
Always says that. John Gruden says, that guy's a football player.
Right. John Madden had a bunch of them.
Oh yeah,
but they were all of those guys, but they're not. That's my point. They're not talking about a touchdown call. They've got a signature whatever, but it's not generally on a touchdown call. Some do, but most of them it's something different. But it's it's the signature for their broadcast, but it's not always around a touchdown call.
Right. Well, thanks, Brian, for the question. It was a good one. And we can get into training camp. So the Saints announced a training camp schedule yesterday. There will be 7 open practices. So fans are getting back to training camp. Will Lutz was on Sports Talk yesterday, and he said he's excited to see the fans. It's kind of what makes the engine go. And I agree with that. I felt like there was just not – the last season was entertaining, and there was a really good football team, and there were a lot of really good football games. But there was just something – the juice wasn't there a lot of the time, especially the example I'd go to was Week 3 against the Packers. That felt like a game that should have been just just popping the entire way. If there were fans
Sunday
there
night
and allowed, Aaron Rodgers would not be putting down those hard counts late in the game, because I remember the NFC Championship a few years ago. It was so loud, Jared Goff had to tape over his ear holes in his helmet. You're not running a hard count. You can't even hear your headset. But they just changed so much about the season, and we're kind of starting to get back to fans are going to be there. There won't be any autographs, which is a little different, and I think that if people who don't know that will be disappointed if they get there and they can't get those autographs, because that's a big part of going to training camp. But the first open practice, July 30th. They actually report a couple days earlier. Their first actual practice is July 29th. Is not open to the public. So obviously you've been to a ton of training camps. As your first one as the voice of the Saints. What are you looking for most? What are you most anticipating seeing at camp this year?
A room with air conditioning. Would that be too much to ask for?
Yes.
Probably not. Yes.
I'd say they turn one of those misting fans around and give the media some help, but that's
it'll be, obviously a quarterback competition that we have not seen in a long, long time. We were talking before we got started. I mean, back in the day, that's all the Saints had. Training camp was about quarterback competitions. You had John Forcade and Steve Walsh and Bobby Hebert, and then you had the Billy Joe Tolliver and Billy Joe Hobart and Jeff Blake and Aaron Brooks. And so you're always looking at the number two. It was always this competition. So we've been incredibly, as we've said, spoiled with Drew, with winning, and really his overall health. Missed some games, but for the most part, he's playing with broken ribs. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to watch it. I don't know that we're going to learn a lot. You can watch practice every day, and we can watch, quite frankly, the 3 preseason games. I'm not 100% sure we will learn that much about Jacksonville, Arizona, then Green Bay, or it's a constant. I don't know. I think the battle itself will be intriguing to see how, because if let's say it's going to be this, let's say hypothetically it's the same offense. You're going to run the same offense with Taysom that you would run with Jameis that basically is the holdover of the Drew Brees offense. I don't think that's going to be the case. So you kind of, again, hypothetically, if you were going to have Taysom as your guy, I feel like a revamping of this offense would take place. Whereas Jameis steps in, he's already had a year with the system. You can kind of run the same offense with a lot of different variations. You've never really had, RPO, with a Drew offense. He was going to pass it or run it, but you didn't really have that option. You never had really the option. And now with Jameis or Taysom, you have a true RPO offense. So that's number one. I mean, we can get into the positions, but obviously watching that, although, again, I don't know what we're going to glean every day in that quarterback. Who's number one today? Who's number one tomorrow? I don't feel like it'll be like that.
Right. And I don't know, you don't know if Sean will be as close to the vest about it at this point as he was in previous seasons, but if you go back and look at how, Teddy Bridgewater starting kind of came about, how Taysom Hill starting last year kind of came about, he's very much a fan of using that kind of, mystery to his advantage in game planning. Will that be the case in training camp where you're not, there's plenty of time for other teams to figure out what you're doing? Will he be that, will he be more forthcoming about where these guys stand? I don't think so, but it'll be interesting to see. I also don't think that it's necessarily, I think calling it a quarterback competition is almost misleading, because in 99% of quarterback competitions that you'll see out there, whoever wins is the quarterback and whoever loses is the backup. In this case, if Jameis wins, Taysom Hill is going to have a significant role. So it's
still
not
throw
like
passes,
right? Unless he says, "Hey, I want to get out of here. I need a chance to be starting quarterback," and who knows? But it's not as cut and dried as like, oh, Jameis won the job or Taysom won the job. You still have things to figure out there either way. But I do think you made a really good point about if Taysom does win the job, that's going to mean some significant changes along the offense and strategy wise that they might not have been able to fully implement in the 4 weeks that he was the starter last year. There's only so many changes you can make mid-season. So I do wonder how much of his struggles as you kind of got down the road, especially in Philadelphia, were born out of, okay, we're running this really simple scheme that we can install with Taysom Hill because you just don't have time to reinstall an entire offense. And, I think as you kind of stretch that out and teams get to scout it, it becomes a little easier to play defense against.
I know this. I shouldn't say this. And I'll eat my words if I'm wrong about it, but I know this. Sean Payton has never had this ability where he gets to where people don't know what this team is going to do. What benefit is it of Sean Payton and the Saints, which is his only responsibility, to tell anybody who his quarterback is, ever, until he has to, until that guy runs out on the field against the Packers. It does not benefit this football team at all, ever, to tell anybody who your starting quarterback is. So I fully support him not, whatever, keep it close to the vest because, one, you haven't had this opportunity in 15 years, and two, you don't benefit at all by telling anybody who your starting quarterback is. The team doesn't, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I mean, and the thing is, the team's going to know.
Yeah, they'll know.
The team knows, so they don't need that information. That's all for us.
Right.
This is a very selfish media. Like, I'd like to know so I can plan, but that they're not worried about us.
I don't think that we rank high on that list.
For sure. So this kind of leads me into the next question, and we can kind of work off this too. So I think cornerback, linebacker, maybe defensive tackle are the three positions that, if you're looking at depth, it's really going to be a question of, okay, are the players that are here going to, rise up and take that job, or do the Saints need to bring somebody in? What would you classify, if you had to pick one, as, the most important position where they really need to identify where that depth is, or if they need to go get it?
I would say probably defensive back. I mean, it's kind of been a sore spot, and it's kind of, you go into this with kind of the same names that we've seen in previous years, and you lost Jenkins, Janoris, and so they've got some money to play with, and I think there'll be some people that come available throughout these next 3 weeks and prior to the start of the season. That's one of them. Wide receivers, another one, where again you lost a few kind of players, and you need to get Michael Thomas back. It needs to be a big year for Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway, and then another guy. Maybe if there's a guy out there that fits, financially and fits. And then for me, the interior defensive line. You lost, Sheldon and Malcolm. You're strong on the edge, but you lost Trey. But yet you've got Cam, and you've got Peyton Turner as well. You've got people on the edge. But I think it's like you say, it's going to have to be step up years for positions because they've lost people. I think the David Onyemadas. I think Adam Trotman and Nick Vannett. At tight ends have to step up merely because they lost two players, and those two players took with them 54 catches, like 8 or 9 touchdowns. So that position in and of itself needs to kind of step up more, simply because that's the position. Traquan Smith is in his 4th year, 3rd round pick. We've seen glimpses, need to see more. But they need somebody opposite Mike Thomas. Marshawn needs somebody opposite him to be, that kind of the balance. So it wouldn't surprise me in those 3 areas, which means the Saints will sign a tight end or a running back. You're never right. You think you are. You
sign a third punter.
Right. You look at the math and you go, well, certainly interior defensive line, wide receiver, or secondary would be, or a linebacker. What's Quan Alexander going to do? Do you bring him back? You've got, Bond's only in his, he's young. Warner's a rookie. So, I think the defense, it would be if I had with the 11 million, it were monopoly money in mine, it'd be where I would spend it, depending on who came available.
Right. And I think that's a good point, because one thing that has become clear over the last few years, this is a defensive team now. And that's a really strange thing to say if you go back, to the Rob Ryan years, where they couldn't stop anyone. Right. This is a defensive team now. You saw Drew Brees go down, and they were winning games 12-10, and I think they beat the Jags like 9-6, and you reload on defense. That's how you stay a competitive team, is you reload on defense and you don't overpay at non-premium positions. That's Seattle when they were really good, the Legion of Boom days. They weren't paying these guys huge contracts. That's how they were able to amass that talent. They did it through the draft, and they found guys who were, maybe underperforming, and they were able to bring that out of them. They were able to develop them, and that's how the Saints are usually able to build out their defense. I think the interior defensive line is also, an easy spot to overlook. But if you go back to that, just sheer dismantling of the Bucs in, I want to say week 8, it was the interior defensive line that was running Tom Brady ragged. That was the unit that the part of the defense that really took over that game. David Onyemata is a star, but they have real depth concerns there that are easy to overlook because it's not a flashy position. But kind of moving on a little bit, if you I don't know how much research you've done or how much tape you've seen on Paulson Adebo, or obviously the other corners. Where do you see that position developing, as far as you have a lot of talented players, but the depth isn't there, and you don't have a starter on the outside. How much of an issue do you think that's going to be if the Saints don't bring anybody in?
Well, certainly Paulson, he was an interesting guy. When the Saints drafted him in the 3rd round, I remember the night of the draft, you looked at all the grades, and the grades for the Saints were terrible. That nobody really thought it was a good draft. They traded up for Peyton Turner and got a linebacker, and then as the weeks kind of went by, people started to look at this draft and really kind of digest it and look at it closely and say, well, look at Paulson. He didn't play last year. You really looked at his body of work prior to last year, and all of a sudden people said, man, that's going to be a good pick. So I think he's a guy that, one, because of the situation he's walking into, is going to get a lot of reps. He is going to have a chance to make an impact simply because he's going to get a lot of reps. Whereas, Peyton Turner, I don't think is going to be asked to do a lot. So he's not necessarily, because of who this team has on the edge, he's going to be asked to do as much as a Paulson or a Pete Werner. Pete Werner's going to get a lot of reps just because of the position and the position they're in. So yeah, somebody needs to emerge, to be that guy. And I think Paulson certainly is going to get the opportunity to be that guy, or they'll try to find somebody, in the market. But you're right. I mean, to me, whenever the Saints had a hard time offensively, it was because of pressure up the middle. It was pressure in Drew's face where he couldn't step up and he couldn't throw over. Pressure in that middle, just like Tom Brady, pressure against Drew when were always problems. That front push. And Drew could move to the right or the left. But, man, when you take – he stayed in that pocket and he would like to step up 1-2, boom. But you take that away, that hurts a lot of quarterbacks. And Brady's one of them.
Right. Most quarterbacks have the ability to step up and deliver a ball. That changes entirely when you're going laterally. And, guys like Mahomes can, just fling the ball downfield like it's nothing. Most quarterbacks struggle in that environment. And especially if you're not a Lamar Jackson or a Taysom Hill, where getting outside the pocket actually benefits you because you find the lane. A guy like Tom Brady, you're in a division with Tom Brady, you got to beat him. So, that's an important element. You always got to look at that. You got to get through them. They weren't able to in the playoffs, but I think they have a recipe that works. and it's just a matter of getting there. I also think for Paulson Adebo specifically, he's going to have eyes on him at training camp. I think cornerback is one of the positions that you're really exposed at training camp because of it's one of the few positions where your reps are live and you're doing a lot of one-on-ones, which really isn't a fair way to evaluate a cornerback in the scheme of a defense. But, it's going to be a situation where these reps are going to get taped and they're going to get shown. And he's going to, you either fly or, you crash and burn in those situations. And I think it's gonna be a big couple of weeks for him to prove that he has the mettle to do that. One final thing before you go, before I let you go rather, is so what would you say is the biggest thing that has changed around the Saints in your time here? Whether that's just kind of atmosphere, whether it's, fan base and how they react to things. Obviously the team has changed a lot. If you had to pick one thing, what would it be?
Well, the fan base is the fan base. Best ever, period. I don't care. I've been on podcasts the last 3 weeks, people all over the country, because Saints are huge everywhere. If it's not your favorite team, if your favorite team is Seattle, but you live in Seattle, your second favorite team is the Saints. And that's true kind of across the board. So Saints fans, period, from the minute they got the franchise all the way through. French fries. It has been unbelievable. I think, to me, the thing now is that winning is expected. It is a winning attitude from the front office to the water boy, to everybody, to every human in that building. It's nothing but about winning. And certainly in 87 and 86, when Mora came with Jim Finks, that was the first time. And they won. They won in 87. In 88, they were 10-6, just didn't make the playoffs because they were in the division with the San Francisco 49ers. They won a division, their first NFC West. And so in those years, from 87 through 91, 92, they were a good football team and got beyond being the lovable losers. But it was not a winning attitude that permeated everything. And now, from 06 and Mickey Loomis and what he's done there, you've got long-term people. You don't have long-term people in the NFL in the front office and the head coach and your quarterback. That just doesn't happen. And so you have this mentality of winning is not something that is desired. It is something that is expected. And I wouldn't say that was a part of this franchise always, certainly not early. And even, beyond that first winning, there were some very lean years from 93 up until when they won their first playoff game against the Rams in 01. So I just think it's a mentality of, it was always harder to get free agents, and now, it's not hard to get a free agent to come here at all. And so it's because it's a winning organization, and so I think that's the biggest change. It's just a winning organization, top to bottom.
No, it's a good answer, and I think it really is spot on. You look around, like, culture is a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot, but outside of New England, maybe Seattle and New Orleans, Green Bay is another example. It's like winning expectations, a winning culture it's difficult to build, and it's even more difficult to maintain, right? And what it creates is a situation where you go 11-5 and losing the divisional round, and that's a failed season.
Right.
So
well, look at I got 13-3. 13-3. People go, oh yeah, good. That's good. 13-3. Well done. 12-4. Great. Good job. Like, good gosh,
right.
But it's that postseason, especially because of how the postseasons ended. But this has been a 49-15 the last 4 years, if my math is correct. And that's unbelievable. Winning clip at a 76%, in a division that I think is very, very tough. And so, it's just that ability. And so that's why I guess I just don't buy in. And maybe I'm too much of a Homer fan I don't buy into this team yes, I know Drew's gone. Drew's a god. I know that, but I don't buy into that. This team is not going to be good this year. I think it's going to be different, but I think it's going to be a good football team. I just do.
Right, and yeah, you don't erase that culture with one player. The question's going to be, can they maintain the offense at the rate that they had, and that's it's always going to be.
I don't know. I think they almost, like you talked about with defense, I think they changed the mentality a little bit. I mean, for the last 4 or 5 years, from a defensive standpoint, you've kind of went, well, if we don't give up 32, we're probably going to win. Right. Say this team's averaged like 31 points or so. So basically, if we don't give up 32, we're in good shape. But really, and moving forward, this team might think, well, we better, they always say 17 to 22 in that range. If you do that from a defense, you've done your job. And maybe if that philosophy is really the new team moving forward, that, hey, we can't give up 31. We're going to give up 17. That maybe we don't, but who knows? Maybe this offense is going to average 30. Nobody knows. That's the beauty of this. We don't know. And the other 31 teams don't know. They don't have any idea what this offense is going to be like.
Right, and you can be a successful offense by limiting turnovers and making sure you're managing field position and putting your defense in good situations. That is an equally important way to win games, and that's I think that's going to be interesting to see how the Saints manage that.
It's a system. I go back and I'm gonna, if I one of the first questions if I ever talked to Sean just kind of one-on-one, I was going to say, when Drew went down for the 5 games and Teddy Bridgewater came in and he just ran the offense. He wasn't spectacular. He didn't do it. He didn't win the games, but he didn't lose the games. Like, I want to say, did you just sit Jameis down and go, watch these 5 games? Right. This is a system. We're not, in Tampa, you were asked to win the games on your arm alone. Watch these 5 games and what Teddy Bridgewater did. That's all. We're not, you don't have to win the game yourself. We'll do the rest. This is all you got to do. Those 5 games certainly got Teddy a new contract in Carolina. But, I mean, he just came in and, like you say, field position, management, ball control, They won all 5 of them. They won all 5. I just want to know, did you sit down with Jameis and go, did you show him these 5 games and say, this is, not looking for you to reinvent the football here. Just run the system.
For sure. And so here's just one kind of, not really a stat, but just one way to drive home like how crazy it is and how successful the Saints have been without winning. They won, I want to say 49-15. They won the most games in the NFL over a 4-year stretch. They're the only NFC South team that did not make a Super Bowl in the 2010s.
God, that's
actually that's not true. Yeah, because technically 2020. I'm counting 2020 as part of the 2010s.
Okay.
In that decade.
Because the Saints won it in 10. Technically, that's when you start getting into the year of the season or the year of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I've always hated that. I wish they could just finish it in the same year so I could stop trying to remember which.
Are you kidding me? They're going later. This thing's going to be March before it's over. They're going to go 18 games in 2 weeks in the season. This thing will be end of February. Football, they're not crazy. They know what they're doing. They got a gold cow in their hand. Let's hold on to this, make it as long as possible.
Right. I still feel like I'm like dribbling with my left hand when I try to say week 18. It's not.
Well, it's funny. I listen to a ton of shows, and you still hear people talk about. I don't know, man. I think 10-6. I still see them 9-7. Yep. This year, and I'm like, well, I don't think that's good enough. I think you need another game.
That math doesn't add up.
And so that's the question. We've always 9-7 because you can make the playoffs at 9-7. What is 10-7 now? 10-6 was always considered a good football year to me. But is 10-7, is that the same as 10-6 now? I don't know, maybe, but certainly
depends if you're in the NFC.
9-8, you've lost 8 games. You've won 9. Just who knows? I don't. There's a lot more teams that make the playoffs than back in the day. So I think I'm interested to see how we look at this 17-game schedule, and also how the coaches look at preseason. How do they look at these 3 games? Because I don't know what game 1 or game 2 is. Game 3 nobody play like game 4 used to be. I don't know if you can afford to do that, but maybe you do. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's important to note that they do still have that week 4. It's just open, so I think that would allow teams to play starters at least some reps in week 3.
There's a 12 day.
Yeah.
Longer than that, like 14-day stretch. Saints play on the 28th, and then they don't play until September 12th. So you're right. You got, which is it's a great tool for teams that are looking to gel and really take that time to become a unit. Not as great for the players who have now a shorter amount of time to make an impact, to make a roster. So that
right.
But you're right. The week is still there. There's no game.
Yep. And maybe that helps solve the Saints always playing terribly on the defensive side of the ball in week 1. They have an extra week, but who knows? I think that's it from me. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak, WWL Radio and Audacy Sports digital sports producer. I'm here with Mike Hoss, the new voice of the Saints. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Hoss, COMM, that's short for communications. Follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. Make sure you check out Audacy.com/WWL for the latest news, sports, talk, and otherwise. And make sure you check us out on Facebook, YouTube. That would be WWL Sports on YouTube, on Twitter at WWLAMFM. And, if you want, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Facebook. I'll get back to you. Thanks for everyone who listened and watched, threw in a comment. We have one more comment based on our earlier discussion. You probably recognize this.
Yep.
I don't think you can use that as your signature call.
No, I wouldn't use that, but that's, the classic. That's, but one of my favorite things about the Garrett Hartley kick that put the Saints in the Super Bowl. It was one of my favorite calls of Jim's. And he makes it, and he's kind of like, he's not at a loss for words. He's like, they're going. He's like, almost like, it's like a laugh. He's like, good, it's good. He reminded me, and I've told you this, it's okay, of Chevy Chase when he's Christmas Vacation, when he's drinking the eggnog. He's like, it's good. He kind of is like, he's somewhere in there. I've tried to match it up together. It's like, it's good. So it's my favorite call. It's certainly that is classic, for the Super Bowl. But when he first made it, it was like, it's good. It's just, believe me, I've stolen from Henderson before, and I can't steal that, but I'll steal other stuff.
Right, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
The other call that I just came to my mind in terms of I remember it because it was good was the after Steve Gleason blocked the punt. I don't know if it was Mike Tirico. It was Monday night, I think, but I can't remember who it was at that point. But he didn't say anything. He just let the moment breathe. Like he just let the crowd.
Tirico did too, but after a while, I mean, you could hear the you could hear the. So I was there. So it was I get chills thinking about it. The other one for Jim, because to me, it's the ones that happen. I know you were trying to sign off like 10 minutes ago. It's the ones that happen that you're not expecting. The blocked punt. Hakeem dropped the ball. No one was expecting Hakeem to drop the ball. I was expecting Hakeem to catch the ball and the Rams to win the game. That's what I was expecting at that point.
Was it John Carney that missed the extra point after the
the River City Relay?
Yeah.
After the River City Relay.
That's got to be a tough one to call.
The game didn't but I mean, when Hakeem dropped the ball, it was like, that was pure emotion because it was unrehearsed. You didn't know he was going to do it, and it's legend. And all he did was Hakeem dropped the ball. Right. So you never know.
All right, that is where we'll leave you. Thanks again, Mike, for joining. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, appreciate it, Jeff, and see everybody on social media.
Peace.